There are parts of you that you've never said out loud, things you carry like shadows under your skin. You've smiled through dinners with a silent scream beneath your ribs. You've said, "I'm fine," with a voice so steady, even you almost believed it. And yet inside, something ached. Not loudly, but always. You've built a life around being okay, around being strong, around surviving. But if I asked you, how long has it been since you felt truly safe in someone's arms? Not because they held you, but because they saw you, what would you say? There are wounds that don't bleed, bruises that come from words unsaid, or the absence of words when you needed them most. Wounds from childhood moments you don't even fully remember. You only remember how cold it felt, how alone, how you stopped asking to be understood because it was easier to be silent than to be disappointed again. This video is not about fixing you. You were never broken. It's about meeting the parts of you that learned to hide so well. Even you stopped noticing them. The ones that ache when you're alone on a Sunday night. The ones that sabotage love because they've only known it as pain. The ones that chase approval, attention, affection because once, a long time ago, they were denied something essential. And they still haven't stopped searching. We're going to walk slowly through those parts together. Not to dissect them, but to hold them, to let them speak. Because healing isn't about perfection, it's about presence. And if you've ever felt like you're too much, or not enough, or just tired of holding it all in, this is for you. Let this be a space where you don't have to pretend. Let this be a moment that you give yourself not to figure everything out, but to simply breathe and feel and be. So if any part of what you just heard touched something real in you, something you haven't looked at in a while, stay. Subscribe if you'd like to come back to moments like these. Like this video if it made you feel even a little less alone. But most importantly, give yourself permission to soften. You don't need to carry it all alone anymore. When you were little, there was a version of you that danced without fear, who asked for what they needed, who reached out with open hands and didn't question whether they were worthy of being held. But slowly you began to notice the shifts, the silences, the moments when your joy was too much, your pain was too dramatic, your needs were inconvenient. You started shrinking. You started learning how to disappear in plain sight. And the world praised you for it. They called you mature for your age. So independent, so strong, but strength became your prison. There's a kind of loneliness that doesn't come from being alone. It comes from never being truly met, from looking at someone you love and realizing they don't really see you, from lying next to them and still feeling like you're sinking quietly under the weight of everything unspoken. And so you turn inward. You stop asking. You stop expecting. You become the caretaker, the peacekeeper, the one who always knows how to soothe everyone else but never yourself. You become so good at it that people start to think you have it all together. But the truth is, you've just mastered the art of hiding your wounds behind smiles, your grief behind productivity, your longing behind polite silence. You've confused love with being needed. You've confused being chosen with being used. And deep down, you wonder if anyone would still stay if you stopped being useful, if you stopped performing, if you stopped being the strong one. This is where healing begins, not with answers, not with strategies, not with quick fix affirmations, but with the courage to pause, to sit beside the version of you that had to grow up too soon, the version of you who learned that love had conditions, that softness was dangerous, that vulnerability was a risk. That part of you doesn't need to be fixed. They just need to be held. And it might feel awkward at first. You might not know how to comfort yourself, how to let the tears come without rushing to wipe them away. But keep going. Don't abandon yourself again. Let your breath deepen. Let your shoulders drop. Let the pain come up without judgment. It's been waiting for you. Not to push it away, but to hear it. Because your inner wounds aren't attention-seeking. They're connection-seeking. They don't want you to wallow. They want you to witness. The moment you begin to look at them not with shame but with gentleness is the moment something begins to shift. The parts of you that have been frozen in survival begin to thaw. You stop chasing people who don't see you. You stop blaming yourself for their distance. You begin to realize it was never about you not being enough. It was about them not being capable, and that distinction can set you free. There is a difference between being abandoned and being left. One happens to your body, the other happens to your soul. Many of us were never physically left. We had people around us, parents, partners, friends, but the way they looked through us, the way they dismissed the weight of our tears, the way they turned our vulnerability into inconvenience, that was abandonment too. And so you learn to abandon yourself. You learn to downplay your excitement so no one could laugh at your joy. You learn to swallow your sadness because it always seemed to make others uncomfortable. You stopped asking questions because being curious once got you scolded, shamed, or ignored. You started keeping secrets from yourself. That's the thing no one tells you about trauma. It doesn't always show up as pain. Sometimes it shows up as numbness, as a life that feels fine on the outside, but quietly empty inside. As a version of you that moves through the world like an echo doing what's expected, being who they want you to be, but never quite landing anywhere that feels like home. Healing doesn't happen by trying to return to who you were before it all, because that version of you was innocent, yes, but also fragile, also unprotected, also unaware of how unsafe the world could be. Healing means becoming someone new, someone who holds both the innocence and the wisdom, someone who can feel the hurt without letting it run their life, someone who can set boundaries, not out of anger, but out of self-respect, someone who can say, "This is my limit," without apologizing, and that someone is already within you. They're buried beneath the masks, beneath the survival roles, beneath the years of pretending to be okay. Maybe you felt them before. In the quiet after a breakup, in the middle of a panic attack, in the early morning stillness when something inside whispers, "There has to be more than this." That whisper is not weakness. That whisper is you, the real you, the one who remembers what it means to be whole, the one who's not afraid to feel deeply, love fully, cry loudly, the one who knows that your worth was never up for debate. Even if your parents didn't show you, even if your ex-partner destroyed your trust, even if the world told you to harden, you were always enough. Not because of what you do for others, but simply because you exist. So don't rush to be okay. Don't skip past the ache just to prove that you're strong. Let yourself be soft here. Let yourself unravel. That is not regression. That is return. There's a quiet kind of grief that comes not from what happened, but from what never did. No one talks about that, do they? No one tells you that sometimes the deepest wound comes from a hug you never received, a truth you never heard, a moment that never arrived, the "I'm proud of you" that never came, the "you're safe now" you waited years to hear, the soft gaze of someone who looks at you not to correct or evaluate, but to simply see you. When those moments are missing, something inside of us stays waiting, frozen, hoping that maybe if we become better, quieter, more pleasing, someone will finally notice. Someone will finally reach into that space and fill it. But time passes, and they never come. Not in the way you needed. So we adapt. We become the overachiever, the perfectionist, the overgiver, the one who anticipates everyone's needs before they ask. Not out of love, but out of fear. Because if we're needed, we might be wanted. If we're wanted, we might be kept. If we're kept, maybe we won't have to feel that cold again. But here's the truth no one told you. You cannot earn the love you deserved from the start. You can chase it, you can twist yourself into 1,000 shapes trying to be lovable, you can tolerate crumbs and call it affection. You can confuse anxiety with passion, silence with peace, chaos with aliveness. But real love, the kind that sees you, holds you, stays with you, doesn't come when you perform. It comes when you rest, when you're no longer begging to be seen, when you sit down beside your wounds and say, even if no one else comes, I will stay. Because sometimes healing starts with telling yourself everything you wished they would have said. Maybe that's what you needed to hear. Maybe someone needed to say, I believe you. Maybe someone needed to say, what happened to you wasn't your fault. Maybe someone needed to say, you didn't deserve to be hurt just because you loved. Maybe someone needed to say, you don't have to carry their silence anymore. So let me say it now. You were not too much. You were not too sensitive. You were not dramatic. You were not the reason they couldn't love you the right way. They just couldn't meet you where they hadn't met themselves. That's not on you. What is yours is the choice to no longer abandon the parts of you they didn't know how to hold. The parts that still tremble when they love. The parts that flinch when they trust. The parts that ache not because they're broken, but because they've been holding on for so long. You can set them down now. You can rest. You can breathe. You're safe. There's a moment that comes in healing, not with fireworks, not with applause, but in the quiet, when you suddenly realize you don't hate yourself anymore. You don't wake up with that heavy knot in your chest, wondering what's wrong with you. You don't replay conversations, punishing yourself for every word. You don't look in the mirror and flinch. You just are, softly, simply, enough. But to get there, you have to meet the parts of you you've been avoiding. The angry part, the jealous part, the clingy part, the bitter part. We're taught to shame them, to call them names, to push them down so deep that no one will ever know we're anything less than nice, calm, in control. But those parts aren't your enemies. They're your messengers. Anger? That's the part of you that once felt powerless and is trying to say, I deserve better. Jealousy? That's the part of you that believes your needs will never be met, watching others get what you're too afraid to ask for. Clinginess? That's the part of you that fears if you let go, no one will come back. Bitterness? That's the part of you that trusted too many times and was left bleeding. None of them are monsters. They're just tired. Tired of pretending, tired of protecting you the only way they knew how. Tired of screaming into silence. And when you finally stop running from them, when you sit across from them like old friends, something miraculous happens. They soften. They stop shouting. They stop sabotaging. Because they no longer need to fight for your attention. You've come home to them, to you. That's what they wanted all along. Not for you to fix them, not for you to punish them, but for you to understand that they weren't wrong, or broken, or shameful. They were just scared. And isn't that what so much of our pain is? Fear dressed up in different costumes, fear of being alone, fear of being unloved, fear of being forgotten. But love, real love, begins when you stop running from fear and start walking toward it, gently, slowly, with open arms. You say to that trembling child inside you, I know you're scared. I know you've been hurt. I'm not here to change you. I'm here to hold you. And just like that, you become the person you've always needed. The one who stays. The one who listens. The one who doesn't turn away. Sometimes healing feels like loneliness. Not because you're doing it wrong, but because you're no longer distracting yourself with the wrong things. The wrong people. The wrong patterns. The wrong roles you played just to be accepted. There's a strange silence that comes when you finally stop chasing love in places that can't hold you. When you stop over-explaining to people committed to misunderstanding you. When you stop twisting your truth into something more palatable so you won't be left behind. And in that silence, it can feel like loss. But what if it's not loss? What if it's space? What if it's the room being cleared for something real? Because here's what no one tells you when you stop abandoning yourself to keep others. Some people will leave, and it will hurt. It will feel like rejection, but it's really revelation. You're not losing love. You're losing the illusion of it. You're no longer confusing validation with connection. You're no longer mistaking chaos for intimacy. You're no longer mistaking pain for passion. There's grief in that, and it's holy. You'll grieve the moments you stayed when you wanted to go. You'll grieve the parts of you that begged to be loved, only to be breadcrumbed. You'll grieve the years you spent trying to fix people so they wouldn't leave, instead of letting them go so you could finally be free. Let yourself grieve. Grief is not regression. Grief is your body letting go of illusions it once needed to survive. And underneath that grief, something new is growing. Still soft, still tender, but growing. Self-trust. That tiny voice that whispers, I know what I feel, I know what I need, and I don't have to betray myself anymore to be loved. You start to catch it in small moments. When you pause before saying yes to something that drains you, when you stop texting first just to prove your worth, when you finally block the person who only calls when they're lonely. These aren't acts of cruelty. These are acts of sacred remembering. You're remembering that your energy is precious, that your heart is not a rehearsal space for people who aren't ready, that your love is a gift and not everyone deserves front row access to it. You don't need to be cold to be protected. You just need to be clear. And when you begin living that way, something beautiful happens. You no longer fear being alone because you're no longer abandoning yourself. It's a quiet revolution, isn't it? Not the kind with fireworks or grand declarations, but the kind where you sit at the edge of your own herd and say, I will no longer walk away from you. And when you do that, when you finally turn inward instead of outward, you begin to notice something extraordinary. The ache begins to speak, not in words, but in memories, in sensations, in fragments of things you forgot you remembered. That time you stood at the window waiting for someone who never came. That birthday where everyone sang but no one looked at you. That moment you were crying and someone said, stop being so sensitive. The hurt didn't start with the breakup, or the betrayal, or the loneliness you feel now. It started back there, with the first moment you questioned your worth because of someone else's inability to love you well. You didn't become guarded overnight. You didn't become anxious, or avoidant, or hyper-independent just because. You became those things because your nervous system learned to protect you, to scan the room before speaking, to anticipate rejection before it arrives, to leave before you can be left, to give more than you have, hoping it will make you indispensable. And now you're tired. Not because you're weak, but because you've been running an emotional marathon no one else can see. You've been performing safety instead of feeling it. You've been pretending to be fine just to keep the peace. You've been trying to move on without actually letting yourself feel what happened. But feeling is not weakness. Feeling is remembering you're alive. You're not here to survive your own life. You're here to inhabit it. And yes, that means you will feel the old grief sometimes, the ache of what you didn't get, the parts of you still waiting for the apology that never came. But it also means you'll feel beauty again. Not the kind you have to earn. Not the kind that comes in fleeting highs or dopamine spikes, but the kind that lives in presence. The kind that lives in mornings where you don't hate yourself. In friendships that don't make you guess your worth. In choosing rest, not because you finished your to-do list, but because you are worthy of peace even when nothing is done. This is how you come home to yourself. One boundary at a time, one breath at a time, one tear at a time, and slowly the healing becomes who you are. Not what you do, not where you're going, but the way you walk, softly, steadily, with your heart in your hands, not hidden, not silenced, but whole. There is a version of you waiting on the other side of all this. Not a perfect version, not a healed version who never gets triggered, who never doubts, who never aches, but a version who no longer abandons themselves when the world does. A version who knows how to hold their own hand when no one else reaches out. A version who cries without shame, who rests without guilt, who loves without losing themselves. A version who can walk away from what wounds them not because it doesn't hurt, but because they finally believe they deserve more. That version of you isn't far. They're not some distant, unreachable future. They're already inside you. They've just been buried under years of pretending to be okay, pretending to be strong, pretending to not care when it shattered you. But you don't have to pretend anymore. The people who love you because you hide yourself don't love you. They love the role you play. They love the silence, the compliance, the effort you make to stay small enough for them to feel big. And I know it hurts to let that illusion die. Because when it dies, you're left with the raw truth. I've been lonely even when I wasn't alone. But truth is a starting point, not an ending. From truth, you build something real. Not a fairy tale relationship, not a perfect self-image, but a life that fits. A life that feels like home, not because it's pain-free, but because you finally belong in it. Because you've chosen to stay with yourself. No more ghosting your own needs. No more gaslighting your own emotions. No more shrinking so others can shine. The world doesn't need a quieter version of you. The world needs your full presence. Your messy joy, your loud healing, your awkward truth. And if that means losing people who only liked you when you played small, so be it. Let them go. You're not healing to become lovable. You're healing because you already are. You're healing because the little you inside deserves a safe place to live, a soft place to land, a life that doesn't hurt to wake up to. And the only way to build that life is to never leave yourself again. There's a sacred moment in healing when you realize you were never asking for too much. You were just asking the wrong people. You weren't broken. You were just unheard, unmet, unseen. And when someone goes long enough without being seen, they begin to believe they're invisible, that they don't matter unless they're doing something for someone else. That love is earned through sacrifice. That rest is laziness. That softness is weakness. But what if everything they taught you was upside down? What if your softness is your strength? What if your sensitivity isn't the problem? It's the proof that you feel deeply, love fully, and sense the room in ways others can't. What if you've spent your entire life shrinking for people who were never capable of holding the real you? The bold you, the wild you, the emotional, passionate, messy, true you. And what if the ache you feel isn't from being too much, but from not being enough for yourself, not giving yourself enough grace, not giving yourself enough rest, not giving yourself the permission to be flawed and beautiful and unfinished all at once? Because healing isn't about becoming someone new. It's about coming home to the one you've always been. The one who got buried under the weight of people's expectations, disappointments, projections. The one who tried to fit into too small spaces just to be loved. And now you're outgrowing that version. You can feel it, can't you? In the silence that used to scare you, there's peace now. In the boundaries that used to feel like punishment, there's power now. In the solitude that used to feel like abandonment, there's safety now. This is what healing does. Not all at once. Not in perfect, curated moments, but quietly, subtly, like sunlight slipping into a room that was once always dark. One morning you'll wake up and realize you're not fighting yourself anymore. You're not performing. You're not chasing people who make you doubt your worth. You're not apologizing for your feelings, your truth, your presence. And that is how you know. You didn't just survive. You returned. You reclaimed. You remembered who you are. And even if no one claps for you, even if no one sees the battle you've won, just by choosing to stay, I see you and I'm proud of you. There's a part of you that still waits, quietly, silently, hoping someone will notice the ache behind your eyes, hoping someone will say, you don't have to be strong right now, hoping someone will sit beside you not to fix, not to advise, but just to be there. And maybe no one has. Not the way you needed. And that's the heartbreak. No one talks about the heartbreak of never being chosen the way your soul longed for. The heartbreak of being surrounded but never truly met. So you learn to choose others instead. To give first, to love louder, to stay longer than you should, to prove your worth through your usefulness. But there comes a time when you have to look in the mirror and whisper to that forgotten part of you, I'm choosing you now. And at first, it might not believe you. It might roll its eyes, cross its arms, say, yeah, sure, everyone leaves. But don't turn away. Keep showing up, day after day, choice after choice. Every time you rest when your body begs you to. Every time you say no, even when your voice shakes. Every time you honor your sadness instead of swallowing it. You are reparenting yourself. You are becoming the steady presence that your younger self waited for. And yes, it's hard. It's hard to set boundaries when you were taught to keep the peace. It's hard to rest when your worth was measured by productivity. It's hard to speak your truth when silence was your safest home. But hard things are not bad things. They are the birthplace of transformation. Because every time you refuse to abandon yourself, you stitch your soul back together. And over time, something sacred begins to form, a self-love that doesn't need a mirror, a peace that doesn't depend on others, a knowing that says, even if no one else gets it, I do. This is what Jung meant not with theories or diagrams, but with truth, that your wholeness was never lost, only hidden. And now you're remembering, you're feeling, you're rising, and the parts of you that once begged for someone to stay, they're finally realizing you were the one they were waiting for all along.